You look fine.
You
You look fine.
you better tell us
Thank
about.
you.
You better
I
tell us.
feel fine. I do all kinds of volunteering and just a little side on my birthday. I have a mini workout that I do at home. Side steps. I do 100 of those. I have rubber bands that I pull for shoulder work. I have weights, that 3-pound weights that I do backward butterflies, and I have a 15-pound kettlebell, which I do swings from my knees up. After I did those, then I went up to what's called the pavilion at Decatur Central High School and walked a mile.
Excellent.
On my 87th birthday. I just wanted you to know that.
You just wore me out talking about it.
Why don't you demonstrate it one of these days between now?
Okay,
Yeah,
I can do that.
for worship, you can lead us all in calisthenics. Oh,
Well,
man.
maybe we should have a meeting with some folk songs first. I think that might
Yeah.
be also.
Well, Lynn has some opening music for us. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. Thanks, Lynn. Announcements. Dan and Sylvia are on their way, or are probably in now, Belize City. They were going down to spend some time with Nikki Holland and other folks at the Belize Church and Friends School. so they won't be joining us today. Next week will be monthly meeting for business. I did contact, excuse me, Sean and Tom Rockwell about matters at Quaker Haven and then the camp that they want to have this summer. They're supposed to have some figures for that summer camp this week. And they said that the discussion about transgender, et cetera, there was a group that really was pushing for new policy that was very restrictive, of course, and that didn't happen. That instead they put a little working group together that he said, I heard there were some people that surprised him who volunteered to be on it to see how housing could be arranged to keep people happy. So we may know more soon about that, but I thought that was good information. Are there other announcements? Joys and concerns. Megan?
Dick's home.
Yay. Is
So
that
he's very deconditioned. He would be very impressed by your fitness regimen there. But so we yesterday we walked around the block, which was a good deal more than he had done before, and he's doing his physical therapy exercises as required. And they're telling him that on the one hand you got to keep busy and you got to keep active, and on the other hand don't overdo, because we don't want you bursting into bleeding again. So with such mixed messages, it's hard to find the center point, but he's doing his best. And he's a plugger. He really is. So walked in the door, first thing he did was a set of physical therapy exercises. And I'm optimistic that we'll get back to a baseline that will make him happy.
yeah.
And I go back to work Monday.
The physical body is just a clay shell for the divine spirit. And we're spiritual beings having a human experience rather than the other way around. That's what I like about the Quaker message. It's a little different than the Unitarian message.
Keep my niece and nephew and their family in our prayers. This was Maggie's family. We've all been praying for Maggie for a year or more. She got a clean bill of health at the doctor's in January. So they will be heading back to Peru for a year on the 20th. She and her mom will be coming back at least once during that time for another checkup at Riley. But everything looks really good, and they've given her, carte blanche to go to Peru. So they will be going and probably looking for ways to wind up their participation in the ministry that they created. They're turning it over to local people and things like that. So your prayers for travels, your prayers for them, and wisdom, and knowing when and how to step out, and all of those things would be much appreciated.
Well, there's a line in Streetcar Named Desire where Blanche said, "I've always counted on the kindness of others." And I had some kind people that I had no idea who they were help me this week. One young man wanted to put my bird seat in the car because he thought it was too heavy for me to lift. And then I was at the grocery store and I was trying to find an avocado and I had no clue what they look like. So I went up to these two ladies and I asked if they knew what an avocado looked like. And she took me over and showed me where they were and showed me how to tell if they were ripe or not. So it was just so nice to have people being kind.
Be hospitable, for you may be attending angels unaware. Have you ever thought of yourself as an angel?
No. That's one thing I've never thought of.
Chip does have on one of his dragon shirts today, because today is, the Asian New Year, which is the year of the dragon is this year. So he's dressed appropriately for the holiday, but it's black, so it's also very Quakerly. Well, let's hold these joys and concerns and gratitudes as we center into worship. I'm the worship leader, and we'll speak out of the silence as led. With a nod to my evangelical upbringing, I have a couple of scripture passages to read to begin. The first is from Genesis 1:20. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the firmament of the heavens." So God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarm according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Then in Psalm 104, Thou makest the springs gush forth in the valleys, they flow between the hills, they give drink to every beast of the field. The wild donkeys quench their thirst. By them the birds of the air have their habitation. They sing among the branches. Now, I've more often than I care to admit, been called a bird brain, but I have had birds on the brain lately. That's partly because every year I write for what used to be called the Guidepost Annual. Now it's called Walking in Grace. And it's a collection for the year of daily devotionals, and lots of different people write for them. And I happen to have 2 extra copies if anybody wants any. Those who are here will probably get first dibs, but if you want one, let me know and I'll send it to you. And generally, when I write, just like my other writing, I base it on experience. A lot of it from around Ploughshares. And this year, for some reason, I was struck by all the birds. And I wondered what lessons they might have. The other day, Nancy felt good enough to go for a cart ride. So we got the little cart out and loaded her up, and I took stuff down the burn pile and got it going, which felt good. And then as we were sitting there, we kept hearing a certain cooing sound, which we both recognized from hearing it years ago. It's two bald eagles sitting next to each other. They don't make the fearsome sound that you hear in movies that they always put in, that kind of screeching. When they are hunting, you don't hear them at all. But when they're in this season and feeling frisky towards one another, and they do tend to mate for life, they're sitting up in the tree, and these two eagles are sitting right next to each other, just talking back and forth. And it's such a gentle sound. I thought about, in that case, this fierce-looking bird and its gentle sound. I thought about the fierce love of God towards us. And then on walks, I've witnessed the ducks and how they like, of all things, the still waters. That seemed to have some kind of biblical theme as well. They're not out on the rushing creek or even the lake that gets wind tossed. They're always looking for little ponds, woodpeckers, wild turkeys, owl. So I've been writing a lot about them. In my mind, guideposts scatters your devotions throughout the book, so based on the seasons, except in next year's, I wrote for Advent, so they're all grouped together every Sunday in Advent. But in my mind, they don't title, in other words, sections, but in my mind, this was called The Birds of Our Neighborhood. That was a favorite album of mine by a group called the Innocence Mission, The Birds of Our Neighborhood. And so I kept thinking of that. In Christianity, the early church fathers appeared to use a book of nature, this idea. It was called Librum Naturae, as a part of a two-book theology. One was the Bible, and the other was this book of nature. And if you read, which I'm sure you'll run right out and do, some of the writings of St. Basil or Gregory of Nyssa or St. Augustine or John Cassian or St. John Chrysostom, they all mention it in their writing, this book. St. Augustine, as the Catholics call him, or Augustine, or however you want to say it, suggested that nature and the Bible were a two-volume set of books written by God and filled with divine knowledge. Now, I have to admit that growing up, all the emphasis, as far as learning about God, was on the Bible. What's the Bible say? The Bible says it, I believe it, that settles it. That was a statement that I heard more than too many times as a kid, especially from certain members of the meeting. But I went to a school, the same elementary school that my dad went to, which was not necessarily a good thing because I had some of his teachers years later, and they remembered what a wonderful student he was. But it was John Burroughs Elementary School. And we didn't learn a lot about John Burroughs, and I wish we would have. I mean, we heard he was a naturalist, but that's all we knew. They didn't give any history of who John Burroughs was. But it was later when I encountered some writing by him as a college kid. And Burroughs wrote a lot. One of his statements was, "Every walk in the woods is a religious rite. Every bath in the stream is a saving ordinance. Communion service is at all hours, and the bread and wine are from the heart and marrow of Mother Earth. To find the universal elements enough, to find the air and the water exhilarating, to be refreshed by a morning walk or an evening saunter, and I'll put in, or ride in the golf cart through the woods, to be thrilled by the stars at night, to be elated over a bird's nest or a wildflower in spring, these are the rewards of a simple life. The most precious things of life are near at hand, without money and without price. Each of you has a whole wealth of the universe at your very door. All that I ever had and still have may be yours by stretching forth your hand and taking it. Every walk in the woods is a religious rite. Well, in the 20 years that we've lived at Ploughshares, that has been one of the great learnings of my life. Not that I wasn't raised in nature or by a nature-loving guy. My dad was a big camper and hunter, and he loved to tramp in the woods whenever he had a chance and drag us along. But I never thought of it as a divine encounter, a religious rite necessarily. That there might be something I could learn until I actually moved out and began to pay attention to the ground under my feet and the various tracks of God's amazing creatures through the woods, and just be able to spot where I'd never seen them before, the tiny trails that went in, and began to think about the variety of creatures, but especially the birds. And so I'll share with you one of the meditations I wrote, because it's about not just one of the birds like the ducks or the eagles or the owls, but all of them. When early autumn arrives, one of the things I do, I take all the bird feeders down in the late spring and figure there's plenty of food for them the rest of the time. But in early autumn, I get all the bird feeders out, clean them up, go buy some bird feed and start hanging them. Most of the bird feeders, suet feeders and various seeds, go in a little patch of what we would call the backyard. It's used to be a garden that Nancy had carefully tended with lots of grasses and wildflowers. Our old hand pump is out there, still works. It was part of a log cabin that was back there years ago, where we met some people who lived in that little house. And as the woman said, she goes, we were so poor, we just lived pillar to post. And we used to hunt mink down in the creek to sell to the general store and barter for food. So most of the feeders are there so we can stand at the kitchen sink or in our little breakfast nook with all its windows and look out. But those of you who've been to the house know that we have a 2.5-story great room window that's about 10 feet wide, and like I say, goes up 2.5 stories. And to 2 of the side windows, we attach these clear bird feeders by suction cups that actually hang on the windows so the birds come up. And those are some of my favorites because you can just sit there and watch the birds. Excuse me. And it doesn't take long that after that first filling them with the black oil sunflower seeds for the birds to find them. It's a real delight to just sit there and watch all the varieties make their way to the feeders. There's cardinals, there's black-capped chickadees, which are the kids' favorites. The little kids like to come and watch, and one of the first bird names they learn is black-capped chickadee, because it's fun to say, for one thing. But there are house sparrows, tufted titmouse, flickers, house finches, white-breasted nuthatches, all kinds of birds. Some take up residence in a bush that's right off our deck. Others sit up in the mulberry tree. Some are up in the walnut tree. Some wait their turn to get there, while others fly up and try and move the others out. Some sit on top of the bird feeder, waiting for their turn at the table. Their flight plans vary. The cardinals tend to go straight in. They're right in. The black-capped chickadees tend to do this as they come out of the branches. It's kind of this, and I wonder if that has anything to do with the hawk that often sits out there watching by the edge of the woods. But as I watch those birds with their different colors and flying patterns, it'd be easy to see them as all different, which they are. They have their differences. But they do all share one thing, and that's their birdness. They are all birds. When I think about that, I think about the various types of humans there are. Men, women, trans, gay, black, white, Republican, Democrat, Christian, Muslim, Jew. We could go on and on naming differences. So many. And yet, at our most basic, we all share our humanness, like the birds all share their birdness. And we are all beloved children of God. And just like there's room at those bird feeders for all the varieties, there's room at God's table for all of us. For all of us. Whether they're like me or not. And that's something I need to be reminded of. Especially in a time, and those times are often when I have the news on, when I am noticing with annoyance all our differences, the things that seem to divide us. So thank you to the cardinals, the black-capped chickadees, the house sparrows, and God for that reminder. There is room at God's table for all of us to come and feast. Thank you, Lynn. We'll continue on with unprogrammed worship and say, God be with you for those who need to leave for other responsibilities, and hope to see you next week.
Brett, is Chip still there? Is Chip
Yes.
still here? Could he give his benediction? I want to make a note of it. I couldn't remember it, and I'd like to have either memorize it or write it down. Would that be appropriate?
Sure.
May the light of God surround you.
Go
May-
real slowly. Go real slowly. Okay, I got it.
May the light of God surround you. May the love of God enfold you.
Okay.
May the power of God protect you.
Okay.
And may the presence of God watch over you.
Okay.
For wherever you are, God is.
It's nice to have a few things like that memorized. Very nice, Chip. Thank you.
Wonderful message today, Brent.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Yes, Brent, it was very good. I liked listening to the comparison with people and birds.
Thanks. Our hearts clear?
My heart is clear.
Thank you very much, Brent. I really appreciate the analogy between birdness and humanness. That was very helpful.
I did too. I wanted to say I enjoyed it, but I'm not supposed to say that.
Now, that's not what I said. I just. You're supposed to, well, I feel like I'm supposed to get something from it, not necessarily enjoy it. So I try to phrase it in a way that really meant something to me or whatever. But you can say whatever you want.
And I usually do.
Well, birdness is a word that got flagged by Word as not really a word, but I liked it.
Yeah.
I thought if there's humanness, there can be birdness.
Well, exactly.
So,
Exactly.
okay, well, it's good to see everyone and hope to see you next Sunday.
Happy New Year.
Happy Year of the Dragon to you all. I'm dragging many days. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.